The Metis Tech Show.
Welcome to the Metis Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
I like how you guys bounce back and forth between heat pump talk and food talk.
The Metis Tech Show.
Mitsubishi.
So me and Robert actually just got back from Italy. We did a factory training on the S-Mix, and we had some pretty unique food compared to what we're used to. We've done what, like 150 episodes, and it's always something related to barbecue or some ramen or Asian inspired food. But we had some very unique things. I think the first night that we were there, we had this deer prosciutto that was pretty interesting. It was almost like cured meat, but it was venison. So that was pretty cool. Rob, what else did we have that night?
That first night at dinner, they had a couple different venison dishes. So I tried venison tartare, which was exquisite. And like you said, the venison prosciutto. And then I think we got some kind of beef cut as well that just kind of melted in your mouth when you ate it. But the second night, though, we got to try some cuttlefish risotto. So a little bit different, but very tasty. So the cuttlefish was actually better than the risotto, which I was shocked. So
really, yeah. The one thing that was interesting was no matter where we went, just in general, and I'd heard this before I left, but I didn't know how accurate it was. But they give you pasta before your meal. So it's, some restaurants you pick, and then other restaurants it was just given to you. But it was like you had this, it wasn't a small bowl either. It was like a decently sized bowl of pasta before you even got your main. But the other thing I noticed is a lot of the mains didn't necessarily come with a side. So, like I ordered beef the first night, and the gentleman that was waiting on us was like, that doesn't come with anything but the steak. If you want something else. And I didn't, so I just had the steak. But at that point, we'd already had a couple appetizers, and then I had some gnocchi, pumpkin gnocchi. It was really good. So at that point, I was okay not having a side, but it was very different the way they did that. And they kind of anticipated that you would go pasta, meal, and then salad at the end, which was very interesting.
Yeah, the salad at the end was interesting. And then, of course, you're waiting there for like some ranch or something to put in there.
And they're like, nope.
Here's some olive oil and some salt and pepper and maybe a little balsamic, but that's about it. So
yeah.
No ranch for you.
No ranch for me.
The olive oil was amazing. Almost every place that we went to was so good.
Could have just drank that.
Lots of wine. We had a ton of wine there. They had this stuff called grappa, which is regional, I think. And I guess it's a liqueur. It was very sweet.
I mean, if you think of like a port wine, like a after dessert wine, but it was it had more alcohol content, you could tell.
Yeah.
So they only give you a very small glass of it at the end.
They were trying to make sure you sleep good.
Oh, that's great over there.
Well, the thing is so the first night we went, they just offered us the grappa. We didn't ask for it. They just brought it over to the table, and it was really good. It had this like piney flavor, reminded me of like Christmas trees, but it was delicious. It was in a good way. So then the second night we went out, I was like, let's get some grappa. And so I asked for it, and they asked two different types. And because I didn't understand the language, I just said Bianca because I recognized that word. And it was way different. It was strong. I think, Robert, you just took the whole thing in one shot.
I could not sip that. I had to just get it over with. So.
Like coffee.
Yeah. But it's harder to buy wine by the glass. Most were just bottle prices. There were very few glass prices, which was interesting. And almost every meal was espresso. So at the end of the meal, you would have a cup of espresso. And Doug Bush, who's on our Tiger team, the first night, he ordered a cappuccino, and the waiter basically said no. He's like, no, you don't do cappuccino after dinner. You do espresso. So he's like, okay, I guess I'll have espresso.
I will say I can definitely get used to all the espresso breaks instead of pounding energy drinks over here. So
Yeah.
I could live that life.
Yeah. That was definitely something I'm going to take home with me is have some espresso after dinner. It's like a nice palate cleanser. It cleans everything out. And, who cares how it affects your sleep? You've had enough red wine at that point that it doesn't affect your sleep.
Yeah, and then you get back to Georgia and you try to walk around like you did over there, but you got a 100% humidity here, so you're pouring sweat by the time you get back to the house.
Yeah. But Ralph, you were talking about Hutchins.
Oh yeah,
before we
good old
started
Hutchins.
recording.
Yeah. I've been in Dallas for almost a year, and I finally went to Hutchins Barbecue the other day. You said you saw a guy up in Massachusetts with a Hard Eights T-shirt on, and that's where we normally go. It's close to the office. It's a half a mile from the office, so everybody goes to Hard Eights for barbecue. But man, I went to Hutchins and had one of those beef ribs. That thing was like a dinosaur rib, right? That's all you need. I got the beef rib with 2 slices of brisket, right? And I got my sides, was mac and cheese and fried okra. I couldn't eat it all. Could not eat it all because that rib was so massive. And but I will tell you, if you're ever going to go to that place, bring 2 people, because 2 could have shared what I ate, and it would have been $50 a piece versus $100, for just me. So, but it was well worth it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to try that one. We'll make the trip. How far is it from the training center, you think?
It's like 40 minutes, right? But I'm gonna tell you, it's really worth it. There's some a little closer, but that one in particular, that's the one Paul went to. Paul told you about it, right?
Yeah, we'll actually probably get a picture at some point this week from Paul and Steve. They're actually in Dallas this week for the service meeting. So
that's one there. Yeah.
They will be doing Babe's Chicken, and they'll probably make the trip up.
After Paul's been there, they'll go.
Yeah,
I took a picture of it.
Yeah,
yeah, because it's massive. Like I said, it's like a dinosaur bone. The guys in Texas will be like, "Oh, that's just a beef rib. It's no big deal." But if you never had a Texas barbecue beef rib, you gotta try it.
Yeah, we'll have to make the trip next time.
Yeah.
And Willie, is this your first time on the podcast?
Yeah, it's my first time here.
Awesome. So Willie, why don't you just tell us briefly about yourself? You're our new instructor down in Orlando, and then maybe go into 1 or 2 foods that you like to eat.
Okay, yeah. I'm the new technical instructor here in Orlando. I've been doing HVAC work for roughly the last 15 years, and I've had a lot of exposure to train in Mitsubishi. So our primary vendors, and we were a train contractor. My wife always tells me I'm a garbage disposal. I'll eat anything. I don't really have any preference on food necessarily. If it looks good, smells good, tastes good, I'll eat it. I would say I'm not the biggest fan of mushrooms. They got to be cooked right for me. But that's about the only thing I won't eat. I really like Italian food and I really like Mexican food. But now, with that being said, I like hibachi a lot and I like sushi. So those are my food groups, man. Those are my go-tos.
Yeah, you're in a good spot for it then. I don't know about hibachi so much, but down in Orlando, there's no shortage of Mexican restaurants.
No, I like hibachi too. It's just redneck hibachi.
Yeah.
Waffle House down on the corner.
That's right. Yeah.
And they have down in Orlando, I think they have a Jinya at least, which they do ramen, which I know is Ralph's favorite.
Oh, I love it.
But they have other options at Jinya, which is what I like so much about it, is they have non-ramen options, and that's usually what I go with when I go.
Yeah. When I moved here, we just had to check it out because I live in Kissimmee, so it's right outside of Orlando. But they have World Food Truck there, and there's like over 100 different vendors, and they're set up year round. They're open Monday through they're really open Monday through Sunday, I think. But you can go on their website, and they literally have a map of the place. That's how big it is.
Wow.
But I ended up going through, we walked through this whole place. Everybody picked something different from all these different trucks. And the food was great though. It's hit or miss with food trucks, but I ended up getting this hamburger. It was like 3 tiers tall. And this guy who didn't speak English made it for me. And he said, "Hey buddy, you want a burger?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, that sounds great." And he threw me together this burger. And I ate it. It was one of the best hamburgers I ever ate out of a food truck. It was great.
Really? That's
Yeah.
awesome. Cool. Well, welcome everybody to the Metis Tech Show. Bryn Raptor here, technical content developer. Ralph is on. Ralph's been on a handful of times. I feel like you've been on more as a DSG than you have been since you started with us, but
Yeah, we
we're about
never
50-50 anyway.
never can get it right.
Rob is on for his 3rd podcast. This time, I hope he stays awake.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Slap him. He's sitting right next to me. See my hand coming to the screen.
But what are we talking about today?
R2 startup
Yeah.
stuff that, because we're doing the X-Gen in all the training rooms now. I know mine in Dallas is done, and most of them are done, I believe. But stuff that we found that's going to be different, as far as wiring and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I had a couple things come up during my installation here in Boston, whether it was just questions from the contractor or things we found out after the fact need to be changed. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity because it's all fresh in our minds, having our equipment been changed over this last month, to just go over some of those things. And some of it's repetitive. It's something that we have maybe mentioned in previous podcasts, but kind of having it all wrapped up into one about, common pitfalls and how to avoid them.
yeah.
So one of the first things that I want to talk about, because to me, this was a big pain point, both Atlanta and Boston, we had some confusion around the new MNet.
Yeah.
So here in the Boston Training Center, it was originally wired where there was 2 separate runs coming off of our terminal block 3 at the outdoor unit, going to terminal block 2 on each branch controller respectively. And so that was the first thing that we found where we said, oh, we got to fix that. Just like with the previous 410 version, only one wire should be on terminal block 3 if you have a single module system, right? We're going from terminal block 3 at the outdoor unit up to terminal block 2 on our first branch controller, and then to terminal block 2 on every additional sub branch controller. And what I call that, and what I've been calling that, is the primary daisy chain. So get that one out of the way first. Just go from your outdoor unit to all branch controllers. If it was a Y series, it would be all SVKs. And just do that first. That's the end of that daisy chain, nice and easy. And then from each branch controller SVK, we're starting a new daisy chain to the indoor units attached to that daisy chain. So one of the things that I worry about and was worried about when I found out that we had a new daisy chain was that people were going to see those 2 terminal blocks on the branch controller and think it was options. Where they go, this one's, I'm going to run this way with this one, and this way with this one. So that's the kind of stuff that we have to be more aware of than maybe we used to have to.
So here's how I took care of that with my contractors, Bryn. I didn't have any problems wiring it. They was originally going to wire it up just, how they did the engine. But in the submittal package on DSB, I printed out the AutoCAD and I had it laminated. And I said, here you go, fellas. If you follow this AutoCAD exactly, you will not mess it up. And sure enough, they followed it and didn't have a problem. But without that and without being told, it would have been branch controller, just the way the engine was.
Sure.
So that would have been a mistake.
So the AutoCAD actually was able to give you the daisy
exactly.
chain.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep. So told us what controllers to hook up to what, so it told us everything.
Yeah. And that's actually a good thing to bring up too, because Diamond System Builder, in some cases, would have probably bailed out. I had a situation where they had originally were planning to run piping. This was on our smart multi, so not necessarily X generation, but it still matters. They were originally going to run the piping from the IntelliHeat that we were adding to our smart multi to the branch box, and they were going to use the piping size on the coil.
Right, exactly. But DSB tells you otherwise. So that's why what I'm going to have done in my training in Dallas is I'm going to take the AutoCAD and then have it printed up and laminate it, and I'm going to put it on the wall by the LEV kit. So that way you can see it.
Right.
Everybody will be able to have access to it and look and see. Because once it's up in the air, once it's in the ceiling, it's hard to see the wiring diagram, but it'll
Sure.
be right there on the wall.
Yeah, I mean that's with most of our outdoor units, let's say you've got a single system, one outdoor unit, one indoor unit. Typically, if you've got mismatched piping sizes, you're going to go with the indoor unit. So the
Right.
indoor unit is going to dictate your line size. So you're going to adapt at the outdoor unit.
Right.
There are two instances where we actually are adapting at the indoor unit, and that is with the IntelliHeat, and then what we just found out last week is the S-Mixed. So if there's mismatch with the S-Mix, that's being done at the indoor unit, and we're running the piping corresponding to the outdoor unit, or in this case, branch box. But like Ralph, like you said, had it been built in DSB for them, they wouldn't have even questioned it because it wasn't 1/4 5/8, it was 1/4 half.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly.
3/8 5/8. But
I know when our contractor did the S-Mix, I mean, not the S-Mix, but the IntelliHeat coil, I had the DSB already done for him.
Mhm.
And then, so here you go. This is what size lines that you use. And we just followed DSB. So,
yeah, and we've mentioned it probably close to a gazillion times on the podcast, but don't start a next generation or a city multi-job without a DSB. You're just asking for problems. And I think,
in class,
it's very important to have.
Yeah. In class, I always tell them, if somebody sends you out to do a job, one of our jobs for R2 or even a smart multi, and you don't have the diamond system builder, don't even start.
Yep.
Just be like, hey, I'd love to go do the job, but I don't want to mess it up. Do you have the DSB? Right?
Yeah.
And they don't understand how
easy to do
important
it.
it is until you show it to them.
Yeah. I mean, between line sizes and like you said, with the AutoCAD doing the MNet, it eliminates a lot of those problems. The addressing was another one.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys had any issues with addressing, but it's one of those things you got to, take your time with and either let DSB do it or go through the manual process of addressing. But
I think the biggest problem we had was the inch and eight coming off the outdoor unit going down to 5/8.
Sure.
And then having to reduce down at the branch controller, from 5/8 back up again.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that, in our training center, it's a little bit tough because I don't know how it looks in Dallas, but obviously in Boston, they're right next to each other. There's probably only 5 feet of pipe between the two. So again, it becomes a question of where do I upsize? Can I just run it out of the main right to the sub and then drop down at the sub? In the real world, if we've got, 75 feet between the two, you want to upsize that right at the main, right? But obviously in our training centers, it becomes a little bit more tricky because of how close everything is together.
Yeah.
Yeah. The addressing was probably one of the biggest errors that we had in our installation. I had asked them, we had print off our submittal, and I gave them the AutoCAD, and I said, look, here's a wiring diagram and everything is already addressed for you. We go back to do the startup, and I was like, hey, did we address everything? They're like, nope. And everything was already packed back up. And I just handed them the paper, and I was like, all you got to do is plug these numbers in. And they were like, cool, that saved so much time. And back to the piping. We did everything in hard drawn copper all the way through. So it wasn't a big issue getting, necessarily to our indoor units, but our outdoor units was a little bit more of a challenge. I would say that if that those submittals, they have all of our recommended bushings and reducers on there for the equipment. Referencing that before you start the job will save you a lot of time. That took my contractor longer to resolve than just about anything else in the entire project. And the same thing with the ball valves. That was another a big hiccup in our move. We had some that were not the same and some that were the same. And we found out in the installation that we ended up returning quite a few of them because they weren't the same. They just didn't match up well. And I don't know if that's a a new issue or a manufacturing issue, but we ended up returning quite a few of them.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is when you fill out a submittal or you export the submittal from DSB, it will create this project materials list, and it includes all your reducers, your piping lengths, your 90s, all that stuff, and it's based on what you put into your DSB. So it's taking those indoor units, accounting for the line size, and entering in those adapters and quantities, which can be definitely helpful. Because we are talking about the addresses, did anybody notice that with the new indoor units, the dials are a little different?
Yeah, they are different. Yeah,
Yeah.
on a few of them, actually. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So some of them were the same. I did notice, like, I think it was the pancake unit. So our ceiling concealed ducted, I think those were still dial style. But the like 4-way cassette, as an example, it is a white dial with a flat spot, and that flat part of the dial is actually what should be facing. And there's a tiny dash. It's very difficult to see. There's a tiny dash in between that flat spot that actually is setting your address. And so it wasn't so much that we had contractors that were addressing incorrectly on purpose. They knew what the address was supposed to be, but just misaligning because of the new dial style, that part, played a role too. So it makes it even more of a case to say, after you get everything addressed, double check, of course, before you actually hang the units and put the covers back on. But really be diligent about your address search when you first look up maintenance tool.
Yeah.
And make sure, have the DSB right next to it, because you got to make sure everything shows up. It's going to say the model, which is going to be your capacity. So you can at least get an idea of, is it the same unit? But we had an issue where we had 2 units addressed 1, and it was because 1 was supposed to be 2 and the dial was just ever so slightly off. And so that's the kind of things that you have to be aware of with the new equipment.
Yeah, I was fortunate in that case that the contractor addressed everything. I didn't go to every unit and look at the addressing dials, but they did everything. Of course, when we started up, if the addressing was wrong, our controls guys, the contractor was still there. So when we started up, so if it would have been messed up, he would have been, I got to go over there and fix it. So fortunately, our guys were still there when we did the startup. So, but I'm glad you said about the things being different. And I'll tell you what, getting off the R2 for a second, going over to M&P, since this is kind of a new thing, what are you running into? Our LEVs on like the bigger P series and bigger M series they don't snap onto the to the porting or to the piping anymore. They actually there's a little clip that's actually built onto the valve itself where you turn it and the LEV head catches that little clip. So if you're not aware of that, then when you try to take it off, you'll pull it and you'll bend that little clip that's attached to the so it's something new that I didn't know about.
Yeah,
it's kind of nice.
It's like a 90-degree turn now, rather than just being able to pull straight up, and you're basically just clearing the hook or latch that's grabbing the metal bracket on the LEV.
Yep.
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a nice change, actually. It prevents you from, and also make sure that you're seated properly if you change one out.
Yeah, but it is nicer. I think it's better than having that little clip on the pipe. But if guys have been working on this stuff for a while and they go to pull it off and it won't come off, and if you didn't know, you'd be like, it just clips on there.
Yeah. You could be working on Mitsubishis for 10 years, and this is the first time you'd ever have to take the LEV off different. Yeah. And, I'm prone to yanking. I would have just kept pulling. And
I would probably look or took a picture. I probably would have took a picture and like, hey, there's no more clip.
Right.
How does it do it? But so, just something but anyway, we'll go back to the X-Gen again.
Yeah, no, it's important because there's some city multi equipment that's going to have similar styles. So it's good to know that there are some changeover. So keep your eye out. It's not necessarily 100% that clamp style that we're used to. There may be a 90-degree turn involved with removing the LEV head now, which is good information to have. So good call out there.
Yeah, and we're trying our best to find things that are new that wasn't out in the field before. But it's tough because, hey, it's up and running, unless you take every unit apart, you're not going to see everything.
Yeah.
So
On that topic, there's 4 of us here. We all were involved with the installs. How many of you guys started up your outdoor unit before you addressed or set the model and capacity for your LEV kit? Because I did it in Atlanta and I did it in Boston.
yeah,
So yeah,
you get Erica.
those LEV kits don't come with the capacity setting preset like most of our indoor units. You got to
Right.
set that. And so yeah, I did it in Boston, and then me and Rob did it in Atlanta.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely got to read those knee pads that come with them, right?
Yeah.
You got the
Yeah.
FM. The FM is Paul called it the Fantastic Manual.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
Now the new LEV kits, I'm really happy with what they did, because I don't know if you have ever worked with the 410 version, but there was a lot of dip switch setting that you used to have to do with the LEV kits related to whether you're monitoring supply or return air, and there was just a lot of configuration, initial configuration with that LEV kit, and it has become a little bit more simplified, where modeling capacity is pretty much all you have to do, with the exception of 1 or 2 other dip switches, which is great.
So if you look at the PAA coil, the IntelliHeat coil, and look at the LEV kit, it's almost the same. The
Yes.
IntelliHeat coil, the first generation, was a lot harder to set up than this. Pretty much it's plug and play on the new IntelliHeat coil. Where, well, there's some things you got to figure out on the new LEV kit, but it's pretty simple to install once you know what's going on with it.
Yeah,
I would say that it is a challenging install for your first time. But once you know once you know where everything goes, your placements, your dip switches, making sure you address it. The installation process seems very streamlined after the fact.
Yeah, it is once you do that drawing. Once you look at that drawing and go by that drawing, it works. It's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, we have smaller systems in the sense that we used to have a 216,000 BTU engine in our training centers, and just due to refrigerant requirements and some of the sizes of our training centers, we went down to a 6-ton. We kept about the same amount of indoor units. I think we have 1 or 2 less, maybe. But ultimately, we have pretty much the same system, just smaller capacities. And obviously, with it being a training center, our line lengths are a lot less. However, Rob, you had mentioned pulling the vacuum and pressure testing and some of the things that you had to do to really make sure you could pull it down all the way.
Yeah. So when I was gone, when they ran the piping, they did do it properly. I had to go to another training center for a class, but they did run the piping correctly. They floated nitrogen while they brazed. But when I got back after a health pressure test and everything, they couldn't get the vacuum to pull down past 1200. So the next day I brought my rig with, proper vacuum kit, essentially, the 2 3/8 hoses, and, pull the straders out and all that. And I just went ahead and did a triple evac while I was in there. And we went from 1200 microns from pulling it all day long to within about 2 hours, we were down to about 210 microns. And then on our rise test afterwards, we still held to below 400 microns. So
that's awesome.
It's kind of back to the basics thing almost, but a proper nitrogen test to help push that moisture out of any of the lines, and then doing a proper vacuum to then evaporate it out of the lines. And I mean, these are small systems where we're not doing giant condos, but same principle applies. If you do your pressure testing, your vacuum right, you're gonna have very few issues down the road.
Yeah, you seem like if they could hold a pressure test for 24 hours and not lose anything, how come you're not pulling a vacuum down to 500 or?
And our pressure test actually held at 602 psi for 48 hours here.
Yeah.
So it was on a good pressure test. It was just, nothing against, the way some people do it, but when you try to pull through a manifold, you're just adding extra orifices that you have to count on them being sealed completely at all times. And if you've got one discrepancy there, you're going to be staring at a micron gauge for hours when you could have been, at home. So,
So that's what I was going to ask you is, what difference what did you do that you think made the difference to get you down to that 210?
so I will say, like, just compare and contrast. When I got here, they were pulling through just the little Schrader adapter from quartered 5/16, and then pulling through their manifolds as well. What I did is I hooked up, the Schrader removal tools, pulled the Schraders out, hooked the hoses right up to that, just hooked a micron gauge up to the one side near the valves. And I was able to tee in both of the 3/8 hoses into the vacuum. And the funny thing is the pump that was getting the vacuum down to only about 1,200 microns was a 700 CFM pump. And the one that I found that was able to work was kind of a semi-newer, but 500 micron.
Oh, I was going to say 400
Yeah,
microns.
500 micron pump. And we were, from doing it to the 3/8 hoses, pulling the Schraders out, and just, get a good deep vacuum. And we were able to achieve that.
Let me correct something. I said 400 microns, but a 4 CFM is what I meant.
4 CFM.
Yeah, I meant to say 4 CFM, not.
We'll note that, Ralph.
I corrected it. Nobody, hey, Nick from Hawaii, don't be putting in the comments, hey, that was supposed to be 4 CFM. 4 CFM.
He's been waiting on you.
But here's the thing, and the reason why I wanted to bring that up, Rob, is because, like you said, we have smaller systems, and even on the smaller system, we couldn't get it below 1,200 pulling through a manifold.
Right.
So imagine a large system. Imagine a system with, pushing the 295 feet to our furthest indoor unit via sub BC. Imagine how much more line set would exist on a job site. And if you're pulling through a manifold, how much longer it'll take, and realistically may never actually get down to that 500.
I will give a little advice on this. If you're going to do a big system like that, you really need 3/4 inch hoses and a 12 CFM pump.
Absolutely.
Right, not a 7 CFM or 8 CFM. You need a 12 CFM because you'll eventually kill that vacuum pump if you're doing a multiple systems. So 12 CFM is going to be the biggest you can get.
Yeah, change your oil.
Yeah, make sure your oil is changed.
While we're on the topic of vacuum pumps, I thought this was really cool. So at the ESCO conference, our booth was right next to a popular vacuum pump company, and Liberty Pumps. So they have a whole new line of pumps. Some are battery powered,
right? And
the battery powered pumps take multiple different manufacturers of batteries. So I thought that was awesome because, the guy's talking to him. He's like, oh, yeah, it takes a Milwaukee battery or a DeWalt battery. It's up to you. So whatever they happen to use, they could use on this pump, which I thought was pretty cool. But he was in an interesting conversation with actually people that worked in maintenance at the hotel. So this ESCO conference is at a casino. So it's picture a really large resort style hotel. And they have obviously a ton of rooftop units. And he was actually talking to some of the maintenance folks who were asking about the pump. And he had mentioned, making sure you use vacuum rated hoses, larger diameter. Doesn't matter, how big your pump is. If you're using a 1/4 inch hose, you're only going to get the amount of vacuum you can pull through a 1/4 inch hose. And the maintenance folks there got an education. They were like, oh, really? And they had no idea. And so it's like just going to those conferences and talking to people, you realize that there are some, gaps in education and knowledge where, those poor guys, are on the rooftops in Las Vegas and they're trying to pull down this unit and they're having a hard time because they didn't get that education. So that kind of stuff is awesome.
The misconception, Bryn, is I'm going to get the biggest pump I could possibly get and I'm going to pull it through a 1/4 inch hose.
Yeah.
That's a it doesn't matter because you're only going to get what that hose is going to let you pull.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can do as good a job with a 2 CFM pump and the 3/4 inch hose as you could a 12 CFM. You can do a better job with the 2 CFM pump and a 3/4 inch hose than a 12 CFM and a 1/4 inch hose.
Mm.
So
I did really want to stress the nitrogen and the pressure test hold. Mine held over a weekend, okay, because we did it on a Friday. We had a vacuum pulled, and it was pulled down to 500 microns. But when we returned, we had lost almost 100 psi worth of nitrogen over the weekend, and it was actually because of the valve seats on the ball valves. There was some improper packing in there. We found some with some debris, so inspection's really key. But when you pull the vacuum, it seats the valve, right? And it sucks it down. Well, when you pressurize it, then it'll leak. And that was, and that may be very common knowledge, but at the same time, I think it's something to remember to hit upon.
No, you bring up a good point, because I always tell guys, get the micron gauge as far away from the vacuum pump as possible, right? Because if something like that happens, you'll be able to see on the micron gauge, because this is far away from the pump as possible. Because if you did have an issue like that, and if you're close to the pump, then you're gonna pull a vacuum, and the microns will go all the way down. But if you're on the back side, if you're far away from the pump as you can be, if you do have a problem, you're gonna be like, well, why am I not pulling down? Why am I not pulling down? So
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the importance of a rise test after your vacuum.
all right, yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing that I noticed is when we flipped on our disconnect in Boston, there was a couple things we had to work out. Nothing crazy, but small little error codes that popped up, almost all related to addressing. Namely, it was the LEV kit not being a model capacity set.
Right.
One other thing that we tested, because we have the luxury of being at a training center, is what happens if I put a 410A unit on a City Multi X Generation R32 unit. And it will throw an error code. It throws a 7130 error code, and it will just tell you it's an incompatible unit. And so it's looking for that refrigerant sensor, or at least the communication, whether it's the CNSB jumper or it's the actual CNSA communication to that refrigerant sensor board. But if it doesn't see it, you're going to get a 7130. So for those of you who want to get tricky and throw some 410 units on our equipment, it will not work. So don't try to do that. But then, Willie, what did you try down in Orlando?
Yeah, we and this is still to be confirmed, okay, and tested properly. Okay, so I don't want everybody to go do this yet, but we back compatibility checked the R32 indoor units to our 410A equipment. So I actually took 3 indoor 410A units. They were tied into one of our water source systems there in the training facility, and I made a daisy chain from that and just addressed it number 4 and checked it on M-Tool, make sure it popped up appropriately, that there was no error codes. I ran it off the controller on the wall. And then we also drove the system off of the M-Tool as well, and it kicked the outdoor unit on both times. We had no error codes. There was no revisement that needed to be made at that time, like as far as pulling CNSB or removing the refrigerant sensor. But we did test both of those, and it still did not throw any codes on the system.
So the important thing to note there is that is not approved for you to do. And so the reason I wanted to bring it up is not to say, hey, you can take an R32 unit and throw it on a 410A unit. It's to tell you that you got to make sure, double check, right? If it's not an approved combination, you're going to run into some problems, maybe not with function, but if anything were to go wrong with the equipment. So just be aware of that. Double check your equipment as we're going through this transition and make sure that all units are like. If you have an R32 outdoor unit, all indoor units need to be R32. If you have a 410 system, that's a replacement. All indoor units need to remain that R410A.
Yep.
But so yeah, once I got everything hooked up and started up the unit for the first time, I did go through the circuit check function, which essentially is looking through the MNet daisy chain to determine, 1, that the daisy chain was done correctly, and 2, it actually does do a, auxiliary or precursory check of the refrigerant sensor and the logic for if a refrigerant sensor were to detect an error. And so the way it works is after you do your address search screen in the option dropdown, you'll see this safety measures against refrigerant leak tab. And when you click on it, on the very bottom, you can click circuit check. And what you can do is select your indoor units, and one at a time, you can essentially start a circuit check. And what it does is make sure that it's on the correct MNet daisy chain, meaning it's attached to the correct unit. And it'll actually put the fan in high fan speed. Now, it doesn't run the system, but that indoor unit will go into high fan speed. And it took me about 8 minutes to 10 minutes per unit before it would say circuit check successful. But that is another step that you're going to want to take during startup. It's not specifically tied to warranty or the extended warranty process, but just as a cover your butt kind of method, it's really worthwhile to just make sure that your MNet was done correctly and that all of your refrigerant sensors are communicating properly. When I did it and observed the function, all the indoor units that were under the circuit check would go into a high fan speed for a few minutes, and then I would get the circuit check complete. So the important part of that is you need your indoor units powered on during this process. In fact, another thing I found is you don't really have the option to not have an indoor unit powered on with the R32 equipment.
Yep, it's totally different. So
Yeah, that's correct.
which in lies the problem. So if you have an issue with the indoor unit and you need to turn the power off to it, you got to disconnect the MNet to it, or otherwise you will get an error. And so, be aware of that.
Yeah, I think it was a 7101, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I can't remember, but it definitely will give you error. Which for us in the training room, when we're teaching a class, it's going to kind of be a nuisance because we're going to have to, everything you're going to have to, turn the outdoor unit off, turn all the indoors off, turn all the indoors back on, and turn the outdoor on. And you got to wait for just a couple minutes before you can't just turn everything off and then turn everything back on, because you'll still get that same error.
Yeah, my installers were doing that.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not going to work.
Yeah, there's gonna be a learning curve for us as well as instructors doing the city multi-class, because bugging stuff or let's turn this indoor unit off, then you throw an error, and it's going to be we'll figure it out though.
Yeah. So, and Ralph, you brought up a good point, which is just power up sequence in general. You always have to make sure you're powering up your indoor units and branch controllers prior to the outdoor unit. Because the outdoor unit's where the MNet starts. So when you power it on, it's got to see everything. But with the 410A version, you had an indoor unit powered off. No big deal. It would just show up on the address search as a power outage. You could still run the whole system. It would actually even still show some of the data on that indoor unit. It just wouldn't operate. Now, that's not an option. You will go into an error code if there is a power outage on any indoor unit. So let's say you had an indoor unit you need to replace the board for. That whole system is down while that indoor unit's board is out if you get the power outage issue. So if that happens, you're going to have to go to your M1, M2, take your wires off. And to me, it's as a temporary solution, might be worthwhile to just tie them together and then wait for that board to come in. Obviously, it's not ideal. You want home runs everywhere, but that's probably going to be your workaround. If you're having an issue with that.
When we first did the install, we had an issue with one of the indoor units, and I forget what it was, but we got it fixed, so it really doesn't matter. But we had to have power turned off to it, right? So I just disconnected M1, M2, and just let it hang there, and it was fine. So as long as it didn't see the board, it was good. So, because you're not going to turn the whole system off when you got 3-story building and you got how many ever units attached to it. So you're going to have to just disconnect the MNet. I mean, for the time being.
Yeah. As a temporary solution, throw a wire nut in there. Butt connectors is ideal if you're going to have to do something like that. The problem is then you lose that amount of wire when it comes time to put it back on M1, M2.
Right.
So not a permanent fix, but you might have to bypass that indoor unit on the daisy chain. No longer can we just power it off and move on with life. So, and again, it's all refrigerant safety, right? They need to see that power so that they can communicate and ensure that we isolate in the event of a leak and all that good stuff.
The only bad part about doing that, let's say you got to turn your indoor off, disconnect your MNet, then go up to the roof, turn the system off, and then turn the system back on.
I'll tell you what, if you have a leak and you're around that central controller, you're going to know it.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Ed let us know last week. It's very loud.
Did you not?
So,
I
you'll,
don't know
you'll
if
hear
you
it.
were around, but I think I sent you a video of my central controller going off because mine was the first one to get done.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was with the LEV kit where we were trying to figure out the sensors. Um, and Nick was like, "Hey, shut that thing off." I said, "Why?" And he said, "Don't you hear the central controller?" Now, my R2 is in a far corner, way away from the central controller, and I guess I'm tone deaf to that tone. So I was like, "No, I don't hear anything." He said, "Central controller is going off." I said, "No, it's not." He said, "Yeah." So I started walking, and I got about halfway to the central controller, and I could start hearing it. It's like, "Oh my God, you're right." And then so by the time I got up there, and you can't just turn power off and that noise go away. You physically have to go disarm the noise.
Mm.
So just be aware of that.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? I think we
No.
covered a lot of the big ones. Those were the things that kind of hung me up during my installation and some of the things I wanted to test, being all excited about the new X-Gen. So,
there's still some more tests we have to
Sure.
do, but we'll pass them on as we come across it. And a lot of times, it's stuff we want to know, just to know and just have fun with it. But yeah, there's still some more stuff we want to test. But definitely, if I can give anybody any advice, if you're going to install this stuff, along with getting your DSB, your piping layout, your diagram, get the AutoCAD.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
If you have that, you can send anybody out to wire that thing up and address it. Almost, but give them a quick lesson.
Yeah. And I'm sure at some point you'll get an update of the X-Gen, what we've learned. We did it with the M&P equipment. So
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have some revised information and some new information in a couple of months when we get to play with our equipment. It's one of the luxuries of being instructors is we get to work with live equipment and mess around with it and see what happens. So
We'll
we'll definitely have some more information at some point.
Me and Robert's messing around with LEV kit in here, trying to see what happens when you have an error, where what terminals send what to what. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I'm gonna take some lunch, which I brought a turkey cheese sandwich and some peaches. So I went from Italian food all last week and, eating lavishly, and we had beef cheek one night and all this stuff. And then I come home and I'm like, all right, back on the schedule.
Wait a second. You got Dunkin' Donuts right next door. Go over there.
right.
I cannot stand Dunkin' Donuts.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Being a guy from Massachusetts, you'd think I'd like it, but I cannot stand Dunkin' Donuts. So
They'll never sponsor this podcast.
They'll never sponsor this podcast.
bummer. Who knows? Maybe if they offer, we'll change my mind.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm
You have to get a
thinking I love
tattoo of a
Dunkin'
donut
Donuts.
on your arm,
Yeah, you have a Dunkin' right there.
Yeah, we'll replace the circle on the logo with a donut.
Yeah.
So,
All right,
All right.
guys. Thank you very much.
Sounds
We'll
good to
see
me.
you on the next one.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye-bye.